everyone. Thank you very much for having me back again. And yes, tonight I'm going to be talking about herbal approaches to women's health. Do stop me as we go through if you do have any questions that you want answered as we go. But there will be questions after the break at the end as well. So, I've got it right. Okay, so herbal approaches to women's health. What do I mean by women's health? Because it's pretty broad, isn't it? And it's meant to be broad because I deal with predominantly women in my practice. I think about 95% of my patients are women. And what herbs work really well on is hormones. I did a previous talk on stress, which is hormone mediated, and that kind of feeds into this a bit. So there will be a little bit of a crossover, but predominantly we work with a lot of hormonal things. Everything from menopause and beyond. I do a lot of work with mums and babies, and I'm really passionate about that. I do a lot of work with fertility. I do work with PMS, perimenopause, menopause, so the physical and the emotional symptoms of that, stress, anxiety, IBS, anything really that affects a woman, but focusing mainly on these hormonal changes that we go through. Of course, that's not an exhaustive list. You know, you can come to me with anything really. And I do treat men. I won't discriminate against men, but it just happens, and I think the herbalists across the board, we generally have more women come to see us. Actually, I say that. I've got a colleague who had 95% men in her practice, so maybe it's just me. So we're going to start by talking about stress. Why am I starting with stress? Well, the reason why is because stress can have an enormous impact on health, particularly with hormones. Whether that's fertility, whether it's PMS, whether that's menopause, stress has a real grounding in what's happening further down the line with hormones. So if you think about, I've got someone coming to me with menopause, I can throw all the phytoestrogenic herbs I like at them, but if I haven't considered the stress right at the start, then it's not going to have the right effect. It's not going to be working as I need it to be. So this is part of the holistic approach. You need to be looking at all of these different things simultaneously. And stress is, like I say, it's an important part of fertility, it's an important part of PMS, it's an important part of menopause. So, it can be a huge contributing factor in all hormonal issues. Long-term symptoms of stress include anxiety, difficulty sleeping, food cravings, so sweet, salty food, loss of libido, difficulty concentrating, depression, irritability, tired and wired, and I spoke about that last time with the adrenal talk, people who are exhausted but can't stop that nervous energy, weakened immune system, so keep getting coy, and menstrual disorders. So it's quite a range of illnesses, it's quite a lot of symptoms that you could be suffering from as a result of stress. Just a pictogram of all of those problems, all of those potential things that could be going on, the physical and mental and emotional side of things. And there is a balance. Everything's interlinked. So it's important to maintain that balance between your hormones, the endocrine system, the nervous system, and your immune system. If one of them's out of kilter, then it will have an effect on all the others. Stress, I've talked about fight and flight, and that was part of the adrenal talk that I did last time. Fight and flight and resistance, so that's where people are under chronic stress. And rest and digest, which is really what we want. We want to switch off that stress response and keep things ticking over nicely. Got the major hormone endocrine organs, your pituitary, adrenals, pancreas, ovaries, and your immune system, which of course long-term stress will affect your immune system, and that then affects the nervous system and affects hormones. So it all feeds in together. And there is a picture there. My husband laughed when I showed him this, because I said obviously it's female hormones I'm talking about, so just ignore the left. But you know, there is, and I showed this before as well, this is major endocrine glands, if you're not familiar with them. But moving on, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty now. So pregnenolone. What is it? Pregnenolone, never heard of it before. It's a precursor for other hormones. So it's kind of the building blocks. It's the sugar and the eggs and the flour of the hormone system. It's the building block, if you like. It's it's what's needed to produce the hormones. It's a precursor to estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, and it's also a precursor to cortisol. If you have prolonged periods of stress, then your body's going to be producing high levels of cortisol to keep things up, to keep you in that tired, unwired, resistance, burnt out state. You need lots of cortisol pumping away. In order to keep up the demand for the cortisol, what happens is you get this steal. So the pregnenolone, which is earmarked to go on and make progesterone, testosterone and estrogen, gets rerouted into producing cortisol. That means there's now not enough pregnenolone to make the sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. I'm going to end up getting tongue-tied over that, I'm afraid. So it's literally been stolen away. It's not where it should be. And it's normal for that to happen. If you need lots of cortisol, then, you know, we will find it from somewhere. But, obviously, that has a knock-on effect. Less estrogen and progesterone than there should be. So there you go, there's a little, so you need cholesterol to make pregnenolone, and pregnenolone then goes on to make progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, there, okay? And what happens if we're making loads of cortisol and not enough estrogen and testosterone? So we get a whole range of symptoms. This is why we start with stress. This is why we start here, and we don't just give you loads of black coat wash or give you loads of Vitex. We start here. We start looking at stress, because actually, like I said, I can throw all the hormone herbs at a person, but if I haven't addressed this, then we're still getting that steal. Reduction in estrogen and testosterone, sporadic periods, amenorrhea, which is no periods at all, low sex drive, vaginal dryness, painful sex, joint pain, dry skin and eyes, low energy and motivation, depression and poor memory. You know, these are things that, if we can manage them with herbs, then we really want to. And low levels of progesterone, short luteal phase or short menstrual cycle, or more frequent and shorter cycles. So if I've got someone trying to fall pregnant and they've got a short luteal phase, that really makes it really difficult, on top of having a low libido. You know, all of these things, it all feeds in together. Migraines, breast pain, heavier flow, irregular cycles. It's all really important to look at the picture that someone comes to me with and look at that stress and say, aha, we've got progesterone steal going on. And this is a normal menstrual cycle, the hormones in the menstrual cycle. So we've got estrogen here. So really, you want a nice big peak there. That will increase libido just before ovulation, which is what you want. So you want that nice big flow of estrogen up, get you in the mood, get the libido in the right place so that you're having sex just before you ovulate, and then of course progesterone comes in. That's in an ideal world, but of course if we're dealing with hormonal problems, and we're dealing with cortisol steal, this is maybe not happening as it ought to be. There's various tests and things. I'm asked a lot about tests and scans and things, and it's really difficult to get a clear picture using facts and figures. Often, as a herbalist, we're trained to look at people as they come into us. So the symptoms that someone presents with, as I say, you know, someone's tired and wired, they're not sleeping, finding it difficult to concentrate. It's probably a bit more, for me, it's more telling than having, well, this is a blanket, this is what your hormone levels were on day 13 of your cycle. Unless of course there are situations where it's very, very obvious, but still, people who appear to be menopausal, actually in the correct stress and things, spontaneously start your periods back, which isn't necessarily a good thing for everyone, but you know, there are situations where it's not necessarily the tests aren't necessarily the full picture, I should say. And whether that's through the NHS or whether that's privately, you know, it's not always the most, what's the right way of saying it? It's not always the most reliable of things. Because what I want to see is people, and I want to see what their situation is, not just set figures, because actually we all respond differently to things anyway. And scans, a lot of people ask about scans, but they will often show structure, not function. So something that's structurally fine doesn't mean it's functioning fine. So useful, yes, absolutely, but not prescriptive. It's not the thing that I use to then go on and treat people, because I'm treating people and not numbers, I suppose. So I'm going to go back a bit actually, because what I want to talk about actually is, if you're thinking about fertility, if I've missed this because I've gone through, if you're thinking about fertility, which is something that I deal with a lot, reduction in your sex hormones, actually evolutionarily, it's quite a good thing. It works for its intended purpose. If you think back to caveman days, when we would have been periods of our lives when it really wasn't safe and there were stresses and things going on in our tribe, what would have happened back then is you would have got this cortisol still, which might have actually stopped your periods entirely, and that obviously means that you can't fall pregnant, or it's very, very difficult to fall pregnant if you're not ovulating, and that actually means that it would have preserved life at that time. It wouldn't have been a safe environment for a pregnant woman and for a new baby to be in if you've got lions surrounding you. And actually this is something that I see now in otherwise very healthy women. If they are very stressed or they've lost lots of weight, they stop ovulating and stop getting periods. It's kind of nature's way of saying, right, something's not quite right here, we need to sort this out, and then we'll get back on board with reproducing. But right now, it's not a good time. So I do say that to people, the reason why you've stopped, your periods have stopped, or you've got a really tiny short cycle, is because we need to work on the stress. We need to work on that. And of course, it's not only stress that affects the cycle. There are other various hormonal concerns, so things like polycystic ovaries, perimenopause. Obviously dealing with stress will help to manage these, but we do use various herbal tools alongside it for individual issues, because obviously women's health and hormones is very broad, and I really could just spend days talking about it. So it's, but there are individual tools. So we look at stress, and then we'll look at, depending on what someone's presenting with, we look at other ways of working to improve health and well-being. So what do we do? Again, this is kind of broad. So this was with anyone who comes to me, any women who come to me with hormonal problems, is we, like I said, we look at the stress. And one of those things for stress is our adaptogens. Big fan of adaptogens. I get 3 litres of the stuff. In fact, I bought some with Anya, and I realised I only have about that much left in my bottle because I must get through 2 litres a month. And that's not just for me, that's for patients as well. But adaptogens are a really useful herb. They're ones that are used to specifically target your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. They help manage symptoms of stress. They help help your body to cope in periods of stress, improve your resilience. And you can get various types of adaptogens. So you can get very stimulating ones, you can get very calming ones. And over the years, I think from training to now, I've gone through pretty much all of the adaptogens that there are. And now, like I say, with Anya, I get through tons of it because it's really just perfect for so many of these tired and wired, adrenally burnt out, under lots of pressure, and it's very nice herb for that, and it's gentle as well, so it's not stimulating. There are some herbs that they are really useful, but it's kind of like when you're exhausted, it's tired and wired, it's like going and having a double espresso. Actually, yeah, it will keep you awake, and it will keep you, going, but it's not nourishing you, it's not restoring you, and that's why we've got this range of adaptogens, and that's why I've picked the ones that I've picked over the years, that experience has taught me. And well, like I said, you can't rely solely on adaptogens to save you from stress. You have to do your part and to remove the trigger. Well, it's easier said than done, isn't it, let's be honest. It's very well for me to say, remove the stress. But actually, you know...
It's not that easy to kill your husband.
No, it's not. But yeah, there are things that we can do, and we'll talk about that in a little while, that's not killing your husband. But things that you can do. So although you can't remove the stresses completely, but you can help to manage them. Other things that we use nerve tonics. Nerve tonics help to regulate the stress response, improve your resilience and your response to stress. Liver herbs, really important, whether we're dealing with fertility, whether we're dealing with PMS, whether we're dealing with menopause. Liver herbs are really important. They help improve the elimination and excretion of everything, but including your spent hormones. So things that could be affecting that balance. Hormonal herbs we use, phytoestrogens for example. That helps to redress the balance. Very, very popular. Actually, I think probably about 10 years ago, possibly a bit more, everyone was crazy about phytoestrogens, and there was a lot of mixed research and a lot of mixed thought on them, but we'll talk about that in a little while. And then diet, lifestyle and supplements, the boring ones that no one wants to do, like give up dairy and that sort of stuff. No one's interested in that. So I'm moving on. This is my first herb. So this is with Amy, or ashwagandha, which is Indian ginseng. And this is, I don't like it being called Indian ginseng because I've had people phone me up and say, oh, I've read online that I shouldn't take ginseng when I've got my period. Or I read online that I shouldn't take ginseng if I've got this. It's not the same as Panax ginseng. It's a completely different plant. It's not the same family, it's a completely different plant. And also, not everything you read online is necessarily peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. Some of it is just opinion, and not always particularly good opinion, or it's not founded with anything. It's very much the personal bias. And it's also, people think of ginseng as being this kind of get up and go, this shot of coffee, this guarana, this caffeine, this let's go for it. And ashwagandha within it, it's not like that at all. It's very nourishing, it's very restoring. It's the go-to one for me for tired and wired. I like giving it at night. It's not sedative, so it can be taken in the day, but I like giving it at night because if you are really stressed, if you are under pressure, then your adrenal glands are quietest at night time. So it's when it's going to have the best effect on restoring things. But of course, not everyone remembers to take their medicine at night time. So given in the daytime, it will have the same effect, but it's not a knocking out herb. And I said, I've spoken about this in my adrenal talk. Can you tell it's a firm favourite? Really? I'm going to hand some round actually now. I think I'll do that now. Do feel free to have a taste if you'd like. There's no reason why anyone can't. Just thinking through in my head. No, if anyone wants to taste it. I only have a little bit because it's like my favourite herb in the world. So if you want to smell it. If you fancy tasting it, please do.
Do you usually drink it neat, or you don't mix it with water?
Well, I take my herbs neat because I don't like the taste of herbs, and if I water it down, then I've got to taste it for even longer. I think for me it's the alcohol. I don't tolerate the alcohol very well, so if I can knock it back like a shot, it's done. There's no alcohol in it. It's alcohol. It's a base of alcohol. So tinctures have a base of alcohol. We use dried herbs, we use capsules and various things, but tinctures are usually the most efficient way because depending on the extraction method, you get most of what you need out using an alcoholic extraction. And despite tasting a bit unusual, they are usually the easiest way to take it because you've got one shot and you're done. You don't have to take 3 capsules in the morning, 3 capsules at lunchtime, 3 capsules at dinner time. it's sort of once or twice a day.
So the tinctures, do they just extract the compounds? Because like in a herb, you have so many different properties, different compounds, and
the ones that we use, the tinctures, the way that herbalists will use it, is a whole plant extract. So
they extract the whole plant.
The whole
so it's
plant.
not just a compound,
it's not,
or one
no.
particular two compounds. It's
No,
just the whole plant.
it's the whole plant.
Right,
You could, what you can get standardised products, and standardised are where they've just taken the seemingly active constituents
right, that's
out.
more like pharmaceutical Western.
Yes,
but
Or even if you go into health food shops, if you look on the back, it will say standardised to contain 420 grams of blah 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 blah.
Of the actual compound,
Which is great, because actually sometimes that's really useful, but actually all those seemingly inactive chemicals that are bubbling away in your nettle leaf or whatever, they're actually really useful.
Very useful.
There's several
which can antagonise sometimes the negative effects of
you can
having
buffer.
too much of
You can be
one
buffering
compound.
things. With, absolutely. So there's things that often trials where, so for example, black cohosh fell into disrepute a couple of years ago because it had a negative effect on the liver. But unfortunately, as many things, these things do, what many things happen is that the study that was carried out was using standardised extract, which most herbalists wouldn't use. And also there are certain criteria that haven't been met. So I think the problem is there's several over the years, and they've been very similar. So my memory won't serve me right on this. Is that
so is it the standardised then?
Standardised product which herbalists would use. And of course we would be, if someone came to us and presented with liver problems, we wouldn't be whacking huge amounts of black cohosh or carver or whatever. We would be very careful.
And any one product you take for too long, you know, if you take carrots like 3 times a day for weeks, you know, going to turn orange.
You eventually turn orange.
Yeah, so you know.
So
it's not a good argument.
No, and sometimes when you, because even I read studies and I think, oh my goodness, why am I herbalist? This is terrible. And I genuinely get, and then I start picking it apart and I start thinking, okay, right, well that wouldn't happen.
Sure.
That wouldn't be how a herbalist would approach it. I wouldn't give a standardised extract. I would have known the history of that person, and often look at who's done the study and why and that kind of thing. But yeah, most Western herbalists will be using
so they use that the whole plant. So that's good to know. The whole plant. And what what type of alcohol would you use? Do you know about the
I don't make tinctures myself, but you can do at home. Now to use proper ethanol, like the proper alcohol, you have to have a home office licence. But you could use, if you were so inclined to make your own tinctures, you could use just a tasteless, clear alcohol, such as vodka, if you wanted to.
You could take it.
You could. It might not be as effective, probably not, but...
Yeah, I'd like to look into how they actually do that, the extract.
And there are all various different methods of extraction depending on the active constituent, or the most active constituents, or the picture of the constituents in the plant. So some will come out better with water extraction, some will come out better with alcohol extraction, some need heating, some need cooling, some need chopping, some need mashing. So it's the people who do it, it's not me, they know their stuff. This is kind of, you really need to know the, not that I don't know the chemistry, but you know, it's...
And I was just interested,
It's amazing really, because there's all these different ways of doing it, and I mean, the plants can vary. This is part of the reason why herbal medicine is not regulated, I suppose.
So are they made in England or not necessarily?
So some of what I use the herbs will have been, depends. Sometimes I like...
But the actual making of the...
Yeah, the tinctures will be in the UK. Yeah, and I don't use animal parts as well, because Western Chinese herbal medicine, I think they're moving away from that now, because of course...
Well, in the West it's prohibited to use,
to use
they still do
parts.
in parts of China, but possibly, but it's in the hospitals they don't.
No. There are various ones in the UK, and actually they do open days at their sort of manufacturing plants, which might actually be quite interesting. So I'll find out.
I'll let you know.
I'll let you know. But so some of it's fascinating. So there's also different ways of extracting things. The tinctures, the water-based extracts, they'll all taste different.
And so you just mentioned, and so it's the reason it's not regulated.
Herbal medicine's not regulated in the UK. It's not a protected title, so anyone can call themselves a herbalist, which is unfortunate. Without getting too political, we were promised statutory regulation for many, 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 many years, which means that as a herbalist I could work more easily with GPs. People, because of course if you know someone's regulated, they've got a certain level of education, they've got insurance, then people are more likely to refer to you. At the moment, if someone can say I'm a herbalist and they've just read a book or they've done something online, their knowledge isn't quite the same.
Absolutely not, absolutely not.
Yeah, so we were promised, I can't remember how many years ago.
Yeah,
we were promised a while ago that we would get statutory regulation of herbalists, and that was backpedaled about 2 years ago.
But you can't you be covered by insurance?
We're insured. So I'm insured.
Practice,
yeah, I'm qualified and insured, and I'm a member of a professional association.
Right.
So there are
so
herbalists.
people can look up.
Yeah. So I'm a member of the National Institute of Medical Herbalists, and to be a member, you have to have a certain level of education, and you have to be insured. You have to do continuing professional development and all of those kinds of things. So if you're looking for a herbalist, it's not me, then the National Institute of Medical Herbalists is a really good place to go to, because you know that anyone you get from that website is kosher, so to speak.
Well, I thought back in 2011 that they sort of banned certain products being sold in these, you know, Holland and Barrett, and certain, because they're not really trained herbalists at all. Holland and Barrett, they just get a week or two training just to sell the products.
Well,
and
they just
it sells. And I thought that then there was a statutory.
That was supposed to happen.
Yeah, that was implemented. That so if you were a herbalist, then you could prescribe
we're still protected by the Medicines Act of 1968, I think. But it's been over the years, we're a bit up and down. Like, statutory regulation was going to happen, we were going to be fine, we were all going to have jobs, might even get some more work, which would be great, more people.
Because herbs are absolutely fine. Pharmaceutical drugs actually derived from herbal medicine.
I think the World Health Organisation makes
it's just all politics, it's just really
it does, it gets very political, and it's something that...
It's the pharmaceuticals that hold, hold the monopoly.
And that's also why when you're looking at research, any research that you look at online in studies, there's many studies I've looked at there, they've compared like St John's wort, Prozac and things, and I kind of go, oh my goodness, this is a completely useless herb, I don't know why I'm doing this job.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I scratch the surface and I'm like, oh, okay, people who commissioned the study were people who made Prozac, so okay, probably not the most unbiased study, but there's no money to be made from herbs. And that's a sad fact. But there's loads of good to be done with herbs. And so I can only hope that kind of, I spread the herbal love, and people go away, if you don't want to see herbalists, that you know what we do, and you can say, oh, sounds like...
It's very, very effective if you get the right diagnosis and the treatment.
The thing is with herbs and hormones, the other thing that I find is that it's a long process. So someone might come to you wanting a quick fix. So, for example, menopause is a really common one, because if you've suffered for however many months with hot flushes or night sweats or memory, whatever it is, by the time you get to see a herbalist, you've probably had enough. And you've come to see a herbalist because the other alternative is HRT, and I don't really want to do HRT. So you've gone to see a herbalist, and I say, it's going to be at least 8 weeks. And it's like, oh, it just, sometimes it feels like it's a long time to wait on top of all these other symptoms. But, ideally, I'm introducing people to herbal medicine before you get to that point of no return. And so that actually that 8 weeks just flies by. You actually feel a lot better. But any condition that's taken you 5 years, 10 years to get bad, it's going to take a little while to get better. But that's good, because actually it means that with herbs, it's maintainable.
But then do you have so you take it, for example, for 8 weeks, and then a year later you might take some more, or is that?
No, you'd carry on,
So you have to take
and then what we do then is start, once you get to a stage where things are ticking along really nicely, we've had a couple of repeat appointments, 3 months down the line, actually no, I'm feeling really good,
So you
we start to reduce it and see what happens. And sometimes, absolutely fine, no problem. Sometimes I get lady come back saying, no, need to stay on it a bit longer.
Okay.
Or maintain it with either taking a dose once a day or taking herbal teas. Sometimes you can change things so much that you only ever need to maintain those diet and lifestyle things, which actually if you've done it for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, meditating or exercising or swimming or not eating dairy, whatever it is, it becomes just second nature. It's just, I think they reckon it takes 3 days or 3 times to form a habit or something. So, I mean, I'm not entirely convinced on that. But once you've got into the habit and once you're in the, once you're in the groove of every Monday I do X, Y, Z and I take my herbs first thing and I meditate for 10 minutes in the evening, it's just part of your daily routine, like getting up and brushing your teeth and getting on the bus to go to work. So it's kind of, it all gets there eventually. But
I'm not just thinking obviously the cost of the herbs and that.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll maybe come to that later.
Yeah, well, the cost because obviously herbal medicine is private. Unfortunately, I mean, I'd love to be able to work on the NHS, but it's not, certainly not the case right now. But yeah, there is a cost involved. And actually, when I see patients, that's something that we always discuss. Because it might be that I get carried away and I think you could take this in the morning, this in the evening, and you have these supplements, and you should try this. And actually, it doesn't work for everyone. Some people are fine. That's, yep, sign me up, I'll do it. And other people, it's just not possible. And so that's another reason why herbs getting to that maintenance level, taking teas instead of tinctures, or using diet and lifestyle instead of more supplements and things, that's really why it's ideal, because we can tailor it to not only your physical needs, but to everyone's pockets. I've heard of a couple of patients of mine said that they'd seen practitioners over the years and they'd get sent a bundle of stuff and then an invoice. Well, that's always a bit of a shock if you're not expecting an invoice for 150 quid. But I don't do that because it just doesn't work for everyone. And actually, if I sent someone and said, right, you owe me 150 quid, I kind of lose trust in me as well. I think these things need to be talked about. And it's a factor. It's absolutely a factor.
I think the truth is, there's an array of treatments out there, and it's foolish to think that there's only one type of treatment that fits all.
Absolutely.
It's all about finding the right treatment.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can have Western medicine and complement it with herbal medicine or
absolutely.
or other treatments, whether
I always consider myself as an integrated therapist. So that's gone away from being an alternative therapist or complementary, and I'm integrated. I work really happily with consultants and GPs and iridologists and homeopaths, whoever.
I think it's integration.
It's about patient benefit, and I'm not going to sit there if someone says to me, I'm on antibiotics or on chemotherapy. I'm not the kind of person saying, well, you shouldn't be doing that. That's awful. If that's the person's choice, then that's the person's choice, and I will support them in their decisions, and I will support them with whatever they're taking. It might be that by the 3rd course of antibiotics, I might say, I don't think it's a bacterial infection. Let's go back to your GP and get a test. But I'm not. If someone's just flat out quite happy to carry on antibiotics. It's not for me to.
Depends what you're treating.
Lecture them as much as my husband would say I'd like to, but I'm completely non-judgmental because it does no one any favours. And that's, I think, there are other, any therapy, there is an element of ego involved in all of these therapies, and I like to think that I don't have that kind of, you need to take my herbs and you need to do this at the expense of everything else. We can work really well with all sorts of other things. I actually have done. I've had consultants on the phone who've been really open and lovely about my herbs.
Well, and I mean, it does work because there are still representatives from pharmaceutical companies. They go to these places in Latin America where there's tribes and they hear about this. They're using herbs to heal certain illnesses and pathogens, and they want to know. They show us the herbs, come show us, and then they take them and do some, test the sample. They sample them to see what the compound is.
Well, turmeric is a very. I mean,
that's now the big phrase. Yeah, that's been around in herbal medicine.
It has been. It has been around for ages. And in fact, anything that gets people well with fewer side effects, that's great. Unfortunately, it's the extract of turmeric. It's curcumin and not the entire spectrum. But it's certainly people now want to talk about turmeric all the time, which is awesome because it's brilliant. But yeah, turmeric's a perfect example, and there's a couple of others. So
Which apparently you have to mix with pepper in so you can get
yeah, and take it with fat as well. It's another one. So turmeric
fat,
latte,
yeah.
turmeric
So you can
latte,
absorb the
pretty.
cumin.
Yeah. I'm going to hand around the thing. It is an alcoholic base, so anyone who doesn't want to take alcohol, I'll hand around a load of pots. Yeah, you might be put off by the smell, but
So
you
this
can.
is the
That's the thing, yeah, that's the Indian ginseng. And that, like I said, with any herbs, you can knock them down, you can knock it back like a shot, you can water it down. The only thing I say to people is please don't put it in like Coca-Cola or something. You know, if you have to put it in hot water with some lemon or a slice of orange or mint, that's fine. But
So different people would spend a different dose depending
Yes.
on, yes.
yeah, different people take a different dose. That's quite a weak extract, so I'd be looking at 5 mils of that on a daily basis. 5 mils a day, but you can go up quite high with that particular one. There are other herbs with a far
So
narrower.
you will tell us, depending on the person, how much to take, when to take it.
So yeah, I would make up a tincture.
You would have like a
So
prescription.
you normally mix them, you do a mixture of herbs,
Yeah.
a formula.
Yeah, so I make a formula, and then everyone will, you get your bottle with your instructions. So take 10 mils once a day, and you might have in your 10 mils, you might have 2 mils of plutonium, you might have 3 mils of licorice, you might have 2 mils of something else. But it would be a bottle that I would mix that up and send out. And that's based on the individual. So, yeah, you're looking at the stress, as I said, but then you've got all these other tools as well. So, you're looking at stress, you're looking at your liver, you're looking at nerves. And then, so for people with crippling PMS, we'll be looking at anti-inflammatories, anti-cramping sort of herbs. People who have a really short luteal phase, I'll be looking at things to lengthen that, push that out to make it a longer luteal phase. People with hot flushes, be looking at phytoestrogens. People with night sweats, be looking at drying herbs, things that aren't going to leave you soaked to sweat in the middle of the night. So there is kind of, yeah, everyone being so different. I don't think, and I always say this, that's because I'm quite proud of it, I don't think I've ever made 2 identical prescriptions for different people. Even 2 people who come with the same things, because I get a lot of similarities, lots of menopausal things and lots of PMS cramps, irritability, and no two prescriptions have been the same because no 2 people are exactly the same. So, I bring that one out every time I do a talk, but it is true. It's really it's something that I really like about herbal medicine because it's so individual. It's completely bespoke to that person. And I'm moving on now to licorice. And I think I spoke about this before, and I did speak about this before in my last talk. Nurturing, calming, digestive aid, tastes nice, cortisol sparing, adrenal restoring, works on the medulla of the adrenal glands, and really useful actually if I'm dealing with polycystic ovaries. Licorice and peonies combination is fantastic. It's really, really useful, and I'm a big fan of that. So that's particularly with polycystic ovaries, and yeah, this one, licorice, no good if you're on water tablets, no good if you suffer with high blood pressure, potassium, electrolyte balances, but smell it. I mean, it smells nicer than Medania already, and this one actually, when you open and close the lid, it gets all gooey because it is quite high in sugar. It's natural sugar, and the amount you take is so minimal. It's not. That's a nice sweet one. It does help improve the taste of a herbal mixture. As with things like cinnamon and fennel, just adds a bit more of a foodie dimension to it. I've also used that in cases where people might not necessarily have polycystic ovaries, but the combination works really well to help reduce some of those symptoms that you might get with polycystic ovaries. So things like irregular menstruation, or no menstruation at all. Actually, I had one lady recently who was treating, who just wasn't having periods, otherwise healthy, no physiological reason, and I was kind of like perplexed. What do I do? Thank you. I was a bit perplexed about it. Sorry.
Okay, your fault. You haven't done anything this side, please. Oh, sorry. I do apologise.
Oh yeah.
And the combination of peony and liverwort just worked wonders, and it's great. And then I move on to nerve tonics. I've not got horrible herbs for you to taste, but I have got, this is my calm tea, which I really, really like. And if anyone, I didn't bring a strainer, so, you know, I was going to say, if anyone's brave enough who wants to try it, but if not, then just have a smell, because this smells lovely, I promise. And it's really nice. The thing is with herbal tea, with medicine, it can taste a bit bitter, or it can taste a little bit like, oh, just neck it, because it's medicine and it's one tiny shot. If I'm asking someone to drink like half a litre of tea a day, it needs to taste nice. I'm always quite proud of my tea blends because they look pretty and they smell nice, because they have got rose and they've got lavender in, and they're really important nerve tonics. In there as well, I've got Scutellaria, skullcap, which is really important, really lovely one. Got Melissa, which is lemon balm. There's no St John's wort in there, but probably people have heard of this before, hypericum or St John's wort. It's a really important nerve tonic. It's not just for depression, multi-use. Leonoris cardiaca, which is another wort, which has a really positive effect on the cardiovascular system, I mean cardiaca, but it's also, and I remember learning about this at uni, it's like a hug from your mother. So it's a really nice tonic, kind of nurturing, loving, caring herb. And I also had one lady who was taking it in an evening mix, and she didn't know it was in it. She said, just take it, it feels like someone's wrapped their arms around me. And I said, oh, that would be the Leonoris. And then rose. Lovely, lovely rose and lavender, which make it smell and taste a lot nicer. But they're very important for helping brighten your day, and just a really good nerve tonic. Well, they're both really good nerve tonics. And then we move on to liver herbs. I'm quite proud that's the picture I took of a dandelion that I very lovingly cultivated in my garden. The root was huge, it was just enormous, I couldn't actually get it all in the frame. Dandelion root is fantastic. It's a nice native herb, very easy to grow. People are quite happy if you want to forage them from their gardens, as long as you don't leave too much of a crater around it. But in seriousness, liver herbs, they're great for improving fat elimination that I spoke about, clearing up spent hormones, stimulating digestion. We tend to not have very many bitter foods in our diets, if any. And that's something that's really missing from our modern Western diet, this bitter herb. And so when you taste bitter herbs, you will know about it. It will knock your socks off. But it's necessary, and that's just one of the only times I say to someone, don't hold your nose and take your tincture, you need to taste it, is dandelion root. Oh, my shame, I didn't bring any. Damn. And then we move on to the hormonal herbs. So, for example, the phytoestrogens, really useful, really useful. And this, over the years, is kind of, I went through phases of them being really popular and then them being really unpopular. But they are balancing. They are not an estrogen. They don't have the same molecular structure as your own endogenous estrogen, so the estrogen that you produce in your body, endogenous estrogen. So they have a similar structure. So they will bind very weakly to your estrogen receptors in your body. And because they bind mildly, they have a much weaker response. They exhibit, a much weaker response than your estrogen. So, if you use it in relative estrogen excess, it will be actually sort of competitively inhibiting your estrogen receptors. It will be blocking your estrogen from getting into that receptor, having a milder response. Or if you've got low levels of estrogen, so menopause, for example, phytoestrogens will have a very weak estrogenic effect, but it's probably still more than what was happening before. So, like with hot flushes and various things, it might be mildly improved, but it's not going to be overnight feeling like 22 again. It's, you know, it will be improved, but it's not realistic. I wish I could promise that with any of this. But I mean, it will improve, but it's never, it's not going to have the same effect as your own endogenous estrogen because it's not binding the same to your receptor sites. So there was a time when it was like, well, you can't take phytoestrogens if you're highly estrogenic. Well, actually you can, because it's actually kind of useful, because then your own endogenous estrogen, which has these quite enormous side effects, it's not having that because you've blocked that receptor site with the phytoestrogen. So it's actually quite beneficial. It's balancing. But again, it's something that's really useful for a herbalist to use, because there are other things going on as well at the same time. There was a time, and many years ago, I used to work in Holland and Barrett. I should have said AN other health food store, but I did. And people would come in and they would just take the black co-wash. They were just, taking abundantly, and it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work.
But not for everybody.
Doesn't work for everyone. No, absolutely. Some people it works great. Other people
taking too many. The dosage was taken too
the
high.
dosage is wrong. It's standardised.
Yeah.
It's actually not concentrating on the stress impact. That's actually stress is having more of an impact than the perimenopause. So there's all of these other things.
And that's why it's best to use it with that in
combination
with another herb, with some other herbs.
This is why I always say actually
for the synergy, the balance.
Yeah, and it's always worth seeing a herbalist because actually it sounds like an enormous expense, but by the time you've taken 4 or 5 different supplements for 6-8 weeks, you've probably spent the amount that you would have spent on seeing a herbalist. Black co-wash, Semisofuga racemosa, it's a really, really popular one. Like I said, it's one that when I used to work in health food shops, it was, I come in with black co-wash, commonly advised use in menopause. It can be really effective, it's not always, but treatment needs to be for at least 8 weeks. I've read a lot of research recently. I had to do a critique on some research, and treatment's 4 weeks and 6 weeks, and it doesn't really do much in that space of time. It needs to be longer, at least longer. But it seems to have an effect on the nervous system as well. So it's not just the physiological changes, it's the mental and emotional changes as well, which is really important, something that we need to address. Warning for useful for hot flushes, rheumatoid arthritis apparently. Didn't know that. And weaning off HRT or replacing HRT. Hi.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is this good for black cohosh? Is it good for, would you say, adrenals?
Would I use it for adrenals?
Because it says for the nervous system is kind of the adrenals, isn't it?
Yeah.
In some respects.
I would say probably still better with withania, something like ashwagandha is probably slightly more specific. It will have an effect on the nervous system and emotional changes during the menopause, perimenopause, but whether it would outside of that, I'm not sure. But I know that very specifically during the perimenopause, women have reported better moods and generally more positive outlooks. But I haven't read much research on outside of the perimenopause period, so
Sure.
it's quite interesting. But
And I'm looking from a men's point of view as well.
from a men's point of view, I would say probably better off with a different herb. It's not something that springs to mind as the most useful for a
But
male.
ashwagandha was equally for men. Right?
Yeah,
Is it
yes,
so?
absolutely. Ashwagandha, I would say probably that's a non-hormonal herb, so that would probably that would have a broader use, I think. Sorry.
Hi. Does it help with low thyroid? I thought somebody said to me it would help with that. I know you said it, but the other
Very good question.
one was better for low thyroid first.
Yeah, it's better for a thyroid. I'm going to have a quick look in my book and see if there's anything that jumps out.
Yeah.
It's not something that would jump out as the primary use, but that's not to say it doesn't have an effect, because lots of our herbs have kind of multi-usage. Let me have a quick check to see if I can find it easily. If not, then I'll have a look during the break. Here we go. I'll have a look in the break and see if I can find out, but it's not something that's immediately jumping out to me, I'm afraid.
So it would be the main herb for that anyway.
No, it's fine because a few years back someone said to me that was the one.
Sure, hang on, let's have a look. It has an effect, yeah, it could do. I mean, it's all interlinked, but it wouldn't be. Can we use? Possibly it might have an effect, but it might not be anything that's overly. Yeah, it's not so not something that appears to be a sort of a primary function, but it is interesting because obviously it's having an effect on the cycle. So at some point it's going to be feeding into there somewhere. Yeah. Red clover is another one. And I was going to go forward this one today, but it was horrible weather. Sorry. I had a look out and I thought, if I go out in the fields with the children now, it's all going to go wrong and I'm never going to make it to Enfield. But they're lovely. Red clovers, they're beautiful. Really, really good as tea. I've always used them for skin conditions like acne. Really, it's a great effect. But primarily for hot flushes over the years. And there's an interesting little anecdote. There was a spate of infertility in sheep. Sheep graze on red clover, and the thought was that actually they're grazing on so much red clover, phytoestrogens, it's not an estrogen, but it's similar, but it was actually causing non-responsiveness to the sheep's own endogenous estrogen. So the estrogen that the sheep were producing just wasn't having an effect, and so they'd become temporarily infertile. And then food. So this is where like the nutrition comes into it. So soya and flaxseed. Soya was another thing when I was studying. I think we went through a period of soya being evil, and now soya is okay. It is okay. It's fine. Non-GMO soya. It's great. And actually, the less processed you can get, the better. And introducing the diet from a younger age as well seems to have a protective benefit against various health concerns in the later years. Soy isoflavone, same as red clover, and flaxseed is lignans, which found in the plant wall. And I'm fairly sure that you know, I've got some red clover. I've got tea bags, red clover tea bags. But I bought some linseed, or flaxseed, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. You've probably all seen it. It's the golden stuff that's good. It's best ground, but you can eat it as it is. Although do take it with a mouthful of water, because it...
The best sauce is the rapid, isn't it?
Sorry?
Fibre.
Yep, perfect. But you do need to grind it. So I use a coffee grinder. I've tried it with a mortar and pestle, but it's just not
Soak it
happening.
overnight or something.
Soaking it overnight as well. And a lot of vegans will use flax eggs. So they will soak ground linseed in water, and it sort of goes gelatinous. That's kind of what happens inside you. That's why you need to drink it. If you're taking tablespoons of flaxseed, you need to take it with water because it goes gelatinous, and it can replace egg in many recipes. So there you go. But yes, non-GMO soya is absolutely fine. And responsibly farmed, obviously, fine responsibly farmed soya. And then moving on to, we've done a bit of diet, the soya and the flax. Some of the supplements that are really useful. B vitamins. B vitamins are incredibly useful in times of stress. But vitamin B6 is also really important for conjugation of estrogen and elimination of estrogen in the gut. Really important. Probiotics also similarly. Any of my patients will crack on about probiotics like there's no tomorrow, and I have done for years. And finally everyone else is catching up because it is really important. A really good broad spectrum probiotic, really important. Cabbage family, see broccolis, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, really good for elimination of any excess estrogen. It's not bad for you either. Magnesium, really good one, really important for stress. Reducing, I said saturated fats, I mean animal fats, and increasing omega essential fatty acids.